And then this week, you'll be contacted by me and Seth Catlin so that we can do this. Thank you so much.
Humbly I come to you now, thirsty for the living water. My heart and my flesh cry out more of you. Jesus, you are all I want. Jesus, you are all my soul desires. Jesus, you are all I need. My heart and my flesh cry out for you. My heart and my flesh cry out for you. Humbly I come to you, thirsty for the living water. My heart and my flesh cry out more of you. Jesus, you are all I need. Jesus, you are all my soul desires. Jesus, you are all I need. My heart and my flesh cry out for you. My heart and my flesh cry out for you. My heart and my flesh cry out for you. Jesus, my heart and my flesh cry out for you. My heart and my flesh cry out. Only you can satisfy. My heart and my flesh cry out. Jesus, Jesus, you love. Oh, my heart and my flesh cry out. Ooh, yeah, my heart and my
As that's finishing up, we'll go ahead and get started. So, hey, we're in a sermon series right now called We Believe. And so this Sunday and for the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking about what we believe at this church. And so last week we went over, we believe that Jesus is our reason. He's our reason for living. He's our reason for waking up. He's the reason that we do anything and everything in our life is because of Jesus. You know, all the baptisms that we've had, all the growth that we've had here, 100% the reason is Jesus. So today we're talking about something that's extremely important and something that many people think is so small that it can't make a big difference. But what we found and what has been proven is that small things done consistently make big, big changes. Many people look at somebody who has something in life and they say, what big things did that person do to get there? But what we found is that it's small things done consistently that mean a lot. There's a guy, you may have heard of him, named Ignaz Semmelweis. Anybody have heard of Ignaz Semmelweis? Barb Schuessler probably has. So what it is, Ignaz Semmelweis, he was a doctor in the early 1800s in Hungary. And he worked at two different maternity wards. And one maternity ward was ran by doctors, and the other was ran by midwives. And the maternity ward where the doctors were, they had a mortality rate of mothers of 18%. 18% of mothers who gave birth died of what they called pregnancy fever. And then over at the midwife clinic, 2% were dying. 2%. So he was wondering what was the difference. And so he went from one hospital to the next, and he was noting the differences. And one thing that he noted was a difference was that in the doctor's wing, in the doctor's hospital, whenever a woman died, a priest would walk down the halls, and he would ring a bell. And so the doctor was like, that's the difference. So surely we'll fire the priest. It's the priest's fault. He's scaring these mothers because they hear this bell and they get so scared that they develop a fever and they die. So they fired the priest. And then the death kept happening. So it wasn't the priest. That wasn't why. And then another thing that he noticed was the midwives, whenever they would deliver a baby, they would do it with the mother on their side, where the doctors would do it with the mother on their back. So he went to the doctors and said, hey, you're doing it wrong. You need to put the mothers on their side instead of on their back. So he tried that, and that didn't work. And then one thing that he noticed that was a big difference, the doctors in their hospital, they were not only delivering babies, but they were also doing autopsies because they wanted to find out why these women were developing fevers. So a doctor would go and he would do an autopsy. And he would do an autopsy on this mother with a fever. And then he would take those instruments in the same hands without washing his hands. And then he would go and deliver a baby. And all of you are like, that's completely psychotic. And the reason you think it's completely psychotic is because Ignaz Semmelweis is the person who found out that germs can be transmitted by hands without washing your hands. Disinfecting wasn't around yet. It didn't come around really until Florence Nightingale came along. And I'm sure you've heard of her. So at this time, Semmelweis went to the doctors and said, hey, I'm going to start asking you guys to disinfect your hands and disinfect your instruments with chlorine. He didn't even know that chlorine was a disinfectant. He thought the smell was what was making women develop fevers. And chlorine has a strong smell that smells clean. So he made them do this, and the mortality rate dropped from 18% to 1%. So he went to all the doctors in Europe and he was like, hey, if you disinfect your hands and your instruments with chlorine, this one small change will change the mortality rate. But germs had not been yet discovered. They weren't discovered until the 1900s. So they told them, like, that is such an insignificant, that's such a small change that will never make a big difference. So the doctors rejected him. And he tried and tried and tried so much to get people to wash their hands and to disinfect their instruments. And he tried so much, and people rejected him so much that he ended up going insane. And he was put into a mental institute. But they told him that such a small change could not make such a big difference. Today, I want to tell you that the words that you say, just the words that you say, matter more than you could ever possibly imagine. See, what we say, the words that we say become the actions that we do. And the actions that we do become the character that we have, and the character that we have determines where our life will go. It starts with thought. Thoughts move to words move to actions, and actions become our character, which determine the life that we have. Your words matter more than you could possibly imagine. Solomon in the Old Testament, thought of to be the wisest man to ever live, said it this way in Proverbs 18 and 21. This isn't going to be on your screen, and the reason it's not on your screen is completely because of Kevin Arnett. So if anybody wants to be upset with anybody, this is him. I asked Kevin to review my sermon to give me feedback, because I think this sermon is extremely important. And Kevin told me it was terrible, and he added a bunch of things. So this is Kevin's fault. But Proverbs 18:21, if you guys would turn with me in your Bible, Proverbs 18:21, pull out your iPhone, you can Google it, and you'll probably get there way faster than anybody flipping in one of those old paper things. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death. The tongue has the power of life and death. Your words have the power of life and death. And how do we know this? If you'll remember in Genesis, if you were to go to Genesis, the first book in the Bible, and you were to go to the first chapter in the Bible, how did God bring the world into existence? By the spoken word. By word. The word has the power of life and death. How did Jesus bring Lazarus back to life? By the spoken word. Your word has the power of life and death. Your words have the power of life and death. If you want to change the life you have, you must change the words you speak. If you want to change the relationships you have, you must change the words that you speak. If you want to change the world, you must change the words that you speak. Small changes in the world make big changes throughout. James chapter 3, James says it this way. Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church. I wish I would have read this. That's a joke. I love my job. For we who teach will be judged more accurate. Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every way. If we could control our tongues, we would be perfect. We can make a large horse. How big of a horse? A large horse. Go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Jump down to verse 9. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. If you guys aren't feeling convicted yet, we can read it again. And so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? The title of my message today is Love is Our Language. Love is our language. And I want to ask you, do you think that you speak more life-giving words? Or would you say that you speak more life-taking words? Would you say that you're speaking life into your friends and into your family and into your coworkers? Or would you say that you're speaking death into them? And you say, well, Jason, that's an overreaction, but I've already showed you and proven to you that your words are more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Your words have the ability to start wars or bring about peace. Your words have the ability to make somebody believe in themselves or to make somebody feel like they're worthless. And all of you have had, at some point in time in your life, been crushed by words, or some of you have been built up and made to believe in yourself by words. Your words are more powerful than you could possibly imagine. If you were to look at a bad marriage, I can guarantee that there are life-taking words in that marriage. And if you were to look at a good marriage, there are life-giving words in that marriage. It took me and Hannah 4 years to have Tate. It took me and Hannah 4 years in surgery and a lot of medications and infertility and a lot of heartache and heartbreak for us to have Tate. But those 4 years, there were a lot of life-giving words that related in a lot of trying to make life things. Some of you men should be very happy about that. A good marriage will always have life-giving words. If you'll notice the people that you don't want to be around, if you pay attention to their words, they have life-taking words. They're constantly complaining, shaming, and blaming. They're constantly tearing you down. But then the people that you love being around, people like Beth Hall and Barb Schussler, people that like you're so excited to be around, they have life-giving words. I love so much when I see Barb's face. She's got this big smile and wants to come up and love me, and it's so exciting to be around them. Like I just want to make up excuses to be around them. Those are life-giving words. And the amazing thing is right now you can choose to give life-giving words, or you can choose to use life-taking words. Proverbs 12:8. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Life-taking words or life-giving words? Proverbs 15:4. The soothing tongue is a tree of life. The soothing tongue is a tree of life. But a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Life-giving and life-taking. How many people here would say that you've had your spirit crushed by words? I remember, I had my hair done before. I got a haircut. And I remember somebody coming up to me and being like, what did you do to your hair? I'm like, I just paid $40 for this. I thought this looked good. This is exactly what Ryan Reynolds did, and everybody loves him. It's so crushing. Or somebody comes up to you, like the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and that's an over-exaggeration. But like one of the worst things ever, I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I went and told this girl at the YMCA that I thought she was so attractive and that I was gonna marry her. And she said, I'm so sorry, I like your brother. Talk about life-taking. I was like, that's it? I'm going to be a priest? I'll never marry? Life is over. Or what if it's worse? What if somebody says, I wish I never had you? Or what if somebody says that they don't want to be around you? Have you ever had your spirits crushed by words? Or maybe you've received life-giving words, where somebody says the words, I believe in you. I'm proud of you. I know that you can do this. I'm with you, and I support you. You know what's funny is a lot of the times we feel like we need to be critical of other people so that we can help them. But do you know that there's a positive way to be critical? You know, I coach high school football, and I'm constantly thinking about my words. I'm constantly thinking about how I can say something in a positive way. So, I want to encourage kids and hold kids to a higher standard, right? So there's a way to tell a kid, hey, that sucked. You did not do good. What are you doing? You're not doing that right. Try harder, work harder. What are you doing? And the tone and the inflection and the body language and the words, it matters because it tears down. But there's also a way to go to a kid and say, hey, you can do better than that, and I believe in you. I believe that you can do better than that. I believe that you're better than that. There's a way to speak life-giving words to encourage someone to do better rather than tearing them down to do bad. So if you had to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you don't have to say this out loud, but on a scale of 1 to 10, would you say that 1 being life-taking words and a 10 being life-giving words constantly, all the time? Would you say that you're more towards the life-taking words towards others or more towards the life-giving words towards others? Would you say that, a lot of the times I tear people down and you know what, I'm just telling them the truth. I'm just being honest with them. Unfortunately, honesty isn't the only thing that we're called to do. We're also called to be loving. Would you say that you're closer to the life-taking, a 1 or 2 or 3, or would you say that you're like a 10? I'm constantly encouraging, I'm never tearing down, I'm always believing in people? The next question, when you speak to yourself, when you speak words to yourself, would you say that you're closer to the life-taking words, or would you say that you're closer to the life-giving words? It's one of the worst things when one of my friends or somebody that I love calls themselves an idiot or calls themselves stupid or calls themselves any name. And what I tell them is hey, I would beat somebody up if they talk to you that way. And it would be so awkward if I beat you up for talking to yourself that way. I would never allow somebody else to call someone that I love a name like that. Why would you talk to yourself that way? Which would you say you are? And it's funny because a lot of the times, when I'm tired, worn out, or I'm just to the point where I just can't take anymore, that's the only time whenever I use life-taking words. And I know it when it happens. And when it happens, you know why it happens? Is because I'm lazy. It doesn't happen very often, but the first time in probably 4 years at the base on Friday, I was so exhausted and so worn out, and this last week was probably the hardest week. The last 2 weeks are probably the hardest 2 weeks that I've had since taking over this church, since working at this church. Maybe this last week there were 2 days that were the hardest days that I've had since I was contemplating not wanting to live anymore. That's how bad this last week was. Thursday was the 14-year anniversary of my dad's death. And that's hard for me, and I was having a bad week anyways. And on Friday, I go to work, and there was a guy who was arguing with me, and he was trying to tell me that I was stupid, and he works for me. He's under me. And he told me that I wasn't good at math, essentially, which I'm the best at math, so that was really upsetting. And I told him, I said, hey, this is going to really suck for you if you keep doing this, because we're going to have a one-on-one conversation that you're really going to hate, so I'd shut up. That is not life-giving. That is not who I want to be. That is not who I want to represent. That is not being loving. And what we've found is that life-taking words are harder. It is so hard to tell someone you believe in them. It is so hard to encourage somebody. It takes energy, but it's so easy to tear somebody down. And what we know is that it takes a matter of seconds to take a life, but it takes 9 months to create one. It takes more energy to be loving. It takes more energy to give life. What will you choose to do? Our words have incredible power. I'm assuming that everybody here wants to walk, talk, live, and love like Jesus. So today we're going to find 3 ways to do this. Number 1, love may be stated in words, but it's proven in action. You know, whenever I got married to Hannah, it was like I had to learn a whole new language. Like words that I thought meant one thing, all of a sudden meant something completely different. Like I remember we were married, and like I had never lived with a woman before. Me and Hannah didn't live together before we got married. And she was walking through the house, and she looked really upset. And like, I'm a keen observer, you know? So I see that, and I'm like, hey, honey, are you okay? She's like, I'm fine. I'm like, oh, it's weird. She didn't look fine. I guess she's fine. Moving on. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she's like, I'm not fine. I'm like, you just said you were fine. I don't know what's happening. So I had to learn a new language. Sometimes she would tell me, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and do that. I'm like, all right, I'll go ahead and do that then. You just told me to. She did not mean that. That's not at all what she meant. It was a fib. I'm not going to say that it was a lie, but it was a fib. That's not what it meant. So I've put together, for those of you who want to know, who want to learn this language, a woman's dictionary. The first word, fine. This is the word women use at the end of any argument when they feel like they are right but can't stand to hear you any longer. It means that you should be quiet. Never use fine to describe how she looks. This will cause you to have one of those arguments. Number 2, 5 minutes. This is actually a half an hour, and it is equivalent to the 5 minutes that your football game is going to last before you take out the trash. So women feel that it's an even trade. When she says nothing, nothing actually means something, and that you should be on your toes and ready. Nothing is usually used to describe a feeling a woman wants or has of wanting to turn you inside out, upside down, and inside out, and backwards. Nothing usually signifies an argument that will last 5 minutes and end with the word fine. Go ahead with raised eyebrows, and notice there's a difference. You got to pay attention to the cues. This is not an indication of permission or agreement. If you believe it is, if you mistake that for permission, she will get upset over nothing. You'll have a 5-minute discussion, and it will end with the word fine. Go ahead with normal eyebrows. This is also not an indication of permission or agreement. It either means I give up because you're an idiot, do what you want because I do not care, and you will get a raised eyebrow, go ahead, in just a few minutes, followed by nothing and fine, and she will talk to you in about 5 minutes when she cools off. This is the introduction to at least my wife's dictionary. See, what's crazy is sometimes when we communicate, we say one thing, but our body says something completely different. If you didn't know this, about 55% of communication is body language. 38% is tone, like the way that you say it. Only 7% is the words that you use. See, the words that we use have to be accommodated or brought along with our body language and our tone. Here's what's unfortunate. Many Christians say, I love you, but their body language and their actions deny it. So this church is a body, and we say that we love the community. But when our body language denies that, people don't believe us. Our body language has to agree with what we say. 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. There's a joke that I used to play on prisoners when I worked at the prison. And they would tell me something, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but prisoners lie quite a bit. And so they would tell me something, and I would be like, yeah, I totally believe you. And they'd be like, no, you don't. I'd be like, yeah, that sounds totally believable. And they're like, you're being sarcastic. I'm like, no, that sounds like the complete truth. It sounds like you're absolutely telling me the truth. And see, I'm saying that I believe them, but they can tell that I don't by my body language. What's funny is yesterday I was at a wedding, and the guy who was doing the catering, I was looking at him, and I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. And then when I went up to get my food, he made a joke, and I was like, I know that I know this guy from somewhere. And so afterwards, I'm like, hey, I know you from somewhere. And we're talking, and we're talking, and we're talking. And then he, shares with me his testimony that he was in prison for 18 years and got out, and now he has this catering company and a barber shop, and he's doing really good. And there's a bunch of articles online if you want to look him up. His name's Terry Greenwood. He's profound. He's rebuilt his life. And I was like, what prison? And he was like, Putnamville. I was like, I was there. And he goes, Jones. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you were the worst. See, when we say one thing, but our body language denies something, we're lying. Benjamin Franklin said it this way: words may show a man's wit, but actions his meaning. When we say one thing, but our actions do not back it up, we deny what we claim. James 1:22. But don't listen to God's word. You must do what it says. Otherwise, you are fooling yourselves. This is the problem that have plagued Christians for years and years and years and years, is that Jesus loved people. And our Bible claims that we love people, and we say that we love people, but we deny it with our actions. You wonder why people aren't showing up to church in droves, is because we are not congruent. And we say that we love people. Who here knows what the Greek word for love is? Anybody? That's true. Shout one of them. Agape. That's one. Anybody else got the others? Eros, Philia, and Storge. So if you were to look at the New Testament in Greek, there are 4 words that they use for love. We only have the word love. And when we say the word love, the Bible, or the dictionary that we read, Webster's, says that that's a noun. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. It's something you feel for someone. It just is. But the Greek word for love that the Bible uses is agape, and it's a verb. In John 13:34 and 35, when Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you, this is how they'll know that you are my disciples. The word that they use there is agapate, A-G-A-P-A-T-E. And when you add A-T-E to the end of a word, it makes it a verb. Agape is defined this way biblically: love that is unconcerned with the self and concerned with the greatest good of another. Agape isn't born just out of emotions, feeling, familiarity, or attraction, but from the will and as a choice. Agape requires faithfulness, commitment, and sacrifice without expecting anything in return. I find it extremely important. If you guys know the story of when Jesus is talking to Peter before or during the Great Supper, before he goes, or Last Supper, before he goes to the cross, he looks at Peter and says, Peter, do you love me? And the word that he used is philia. Peter, do you have brotherly love for me? And Peter says, yes. And Jesus responds, feed my sheep. And then he asks Peter again, Peter, do you love me? And he uses the word philia. And Peter says, yes. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. And then the third time that he asks him, he says, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter says, yes. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. We are called for agape love. We are called to love others. Number 2 way that our words are going to prove that we love others. Our language shows where we are from. Our language is indicative of where we are from. Everybody in here, as far as I know, speaks English. How did you choose to speak English? You didn't, right? You were born and raised in America, around Americans. You're a citizen of America. And in America, we speak English, at least for the majority. If you were born in France, what would you speak? French. If you were born in Mexico, what would you speak? Spanish. So if you were a citizen in a different country that spoke a different language, you would speak the language of that country. Philippians 3:20. But we, all of us, are citizens of heaven, where the Lord Jesus Christ lives. 1 Peter 2:11 says it this way: Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from the worldly desires, to wage war against your very souls. Here's what I have come here to tell you. Don't worry if you're different from the world. Worry if you're not. Don't worry if you sound different and act different from the world. Worry if you're not. See, we are called to be citizens of heaven. We're called to be something different. So citizens of America, they speak English. Citizens of Mexico, they speak Spanish. Citizens of France, they speak French. Citizens of heaven, we speak love. Our language sounds a little bit different. And if you sound like and act like the world, I would be concerned. But if you act different from the world, then you're going to fit right in as a citizen of heaven. Number 3, we can disagree lovingly. I don't know what has happened in the world, it seems, in the last 15, 20 years, and maybe it's been this way always, but it seems like we cannot disagree over anything lovingly. When we disagree, it creates schism, and I can't believe you would think that way. I don't know you. I don't want to be friends with you. And Facebook has made it so easy to unfriend people. Like, it's just like a couple of clicks of a button. But in the world, like, this is a real relationship, and we can disagree lovingly. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if 2 people are always talking and they don't disagree, then one of them is not thinking. There's going to be disagreements, and that's good, and that's important. And we have to figure out how to disagree lovingly. Ephesians 4 and 15. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who is the head, that is Christ. Speaking the truth in love. See, you can speak the truth. I got a buddy that works at the Air Force Base, and he's in training right now. And he is the most honest person I have ever met in my entire life. And he'll say something to somebody, and afterwards I'll be like, why did you just say that to them? Like, you just tore that person down. And he's like, well, I was being honest. I'm like, yeah, you can be honest and loving. And sometimes, I would say all the time, it's more important to be loving than it is to be right. See, we're called to be loving. We're not called to tear other people down. I think there's probably 2 things that you need to know here. If you think to say something nice, say it. If you have something rude or mean or unloving to say, hold on to it. We're called to be loving. Dale Carnegie, in the famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, says it like this. 9 times out of 10, an argument ends with each of the contestants more firmly convinced than ever that he is absolutely right. You can't win an argument. You can't, because if you lose it, you lose it. And if you win it, you lose it. Why? Well, suppose you triumph over the other man and shoot his argument full of holes and prove that he is non compos mentis, which is an idiot, by the way. Then what? You will feel fine, but what about him? You have made him feel inferior. You have hurt his pride, and he will resent your triumph. And a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. We will not win people over to Jesus by genius arguments or all the evidence in the world. We will pull people to Jesus by His love. By His love. Our words can change the world. Paul said it this way in Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. If you read the King James Version here, it says, shut thy trap. It doesn't really say that. It says, watch thy mouth. How did your mom used to say it? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. She was just repeating what Paul said. So I have a challenge for you guys. Last week I challenged you, and I'm sure all of you did it. I challenged you last week to put your shoes under your bed at night, so that every single night you'd have to hit your knees to put your shoes down there, and every single morning you'd have to get up and you'd have to hit your knees to get them out. That was my challenge last week. If you haven't done it yet, there's still time. You can put your shoes under your bed and fall to your knees. My challenge this week, I want you to be able to finish every sentence that you say with the words, and that's how I want it. I want you to be able to finish every sentence you say with, and that's how I want it. So if you feel the need to call someone an idiot, like say, you're an idiot, can you finish that with, and that's how I want it? Or can you look at your marriage and say, my marriage is struggling, and it's probably heading for a divorce, and we can't get along at all, and that's how I want it. I'm in financial ruins, and I'm struggling, and I know that it's not going to get better, and that's how I want it. What would it look like instead to say that I'm believing in Jesus and that he's going to fix my marriage and that it's going to be better than ever, and we're going to glorify Christ as a wedded couple who love Jesus, and that's how I want it. I'm believing in Jesus that he's going to help me get my finances back on track and that we'll be able to save money and build up a reserve and we'll be able to be more generous than we've ever been, and that's how I want it. Instead of telling someone they're an idiot, you could go to them and say that I believe in you and I know that you can do better than this and I know that you're smarter than this, and that's how I want it. See, what you want to see, you should say. If you want to see it, you should say it. If you want to see it, you should say it. And I'm not saying that you should declare to Christ like, Jesus, I believe in you and I want a Mercedes in my driveway. That's not what I mean. But what I do mean is that standing on his word, that he'll always be with you, that he works all things for the good, that incident that happened right there, that Jesus is working in it to work it for the good. And that's how I want it. The words that we say as this church this week will be loving. And we will reach people for Christ, and we will love people for Christ, and the world will be changed because of this church, because of Jesus. And that's how I want it. Because of you allowing Jesus to work through you and through your words this week, somebody's life will be changed for the better. And that's how we want it. That's my challenge for this week. Will you please bow your heads with me? Lord, we come now in the name of Jesus. Lord, I want to pray over this church, Lord, that you will be with them as they go in this week and that they will use their words to glorify you and prove that they are a citizen of heaven. That no unwholesome or corrupt words will come out of their mouth, Lord. That you will be with them and you'll guide their mouths, Lord. That you'll help them watch their tongues. That they will love others and love you and glorify you with everything that they say this week. And we know that because of you, a great harvest will come from this. In your son's precious name we pray. Amen.
Alrighty, so as we begin this next song, we are going to have some members of our prayer team come up to the front and just speak love over you. So if you guys are carrying something heavy and you just need a friend to help you carry that weight today, we want to do that with you. So as we're singing these next two songs, I just want to invite you guys to come up and just take advantage of our prayer team and just let them love you. So you guys, please stand and join us in worship.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, your foes, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Will creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry? Then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing his imminence, his name would burst from sea and sky. Then from rivers to the mountain tops, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry, oh, then in one enraptured hymn of praise we'd sing. words of this bridge are just so incredibly powerful. So just sing this out with your heart today and make it your prayer this morning. I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, then I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. I won't be fooled by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucified with you. 'Cause death is just a doorway into resurrection life. And if I join you in your suffering, then I'll join you when you rise. And when you return in glory with all the angels and the saints, my heart will still be singing, my song will be the same. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified, let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. Let's give the Lord a shout of praise this morning. He is good. Thank you guys so much for worshiping with us this morning. It's been an absolute blessing. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. We love you.